Welcome to this online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. Our mission is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond these walls. My name is Mary Jo Hennessy, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. While we cannot be together in body today, we are grateful to be together in spirit as we gather in this virtual space. It's not the same thing as being with each other physically, but it's what we have for now, and we hope you will find this time both comforting and sustaining. If you are a newcomer or a visitor to our congregation, please let us know you're here by posting a comment on our live Facebook feed or by getting in touch with our membership director, Bethany Thornton, at sunnyhillmembership@gmail.com. We would love to let you know how you can connect with our congregation even during this time when our building is closed. Our opening words today are entitled "The Bright Thread of Hope" and were written by Gretchen Haley. There is too much beauty in this world to give up on it yet, and it is always too soon to surrender to cynicism. Bring your doubt, your skepticism, your downright confusion, even your bitterness. But in the midst of all these, in the center, wrap your tender fingers around that bright thread of hope. Feel in your heart that still steady hunger for something more. The vision we glimpse every day in the rising sun across the foothills. The light that spreads across the face of the one we love. The look of knowing all there is to know and still loving life, loving us just as it is, just as we are. For this hour, we come to celebrate, to praise, to give thanks, to refuse to give up, to steady ourselves, keepers of hope, brave builders of this still possible world.
Please join us in saying the words for lighting our chalice. We light our chalice to celebrate the warmth of community, the fire of justice, and the eternal flame of love. Please rise in body and or spirit and join in singing our hymn, When the Summer Sun is Shining.
When the summer sun is shining over golden land and sea, and the flowers in the hedgerow welcome butterfly and bee, then my open heart is glowing, full of warmth for everyone, and I feel an inner beauty which reflects the summer sun. When the summer clouds of thunder bring the long-awaited rain, and the thirsty soil is moistened and the grass is green again, then I long for summer sunshine, but I know that clouds and tears are a part of life's refreshment, like the rainbow's hopes and fears. In the cool of summer evening, when the dancing insects play, and in the garden, street, and meadow linger echoes of the day, then my heart is full of yearning, hopes and memories flood the whole of my being, reaching inwards to the corners of my soul.
For each of us, there are certain sights, sounds, or smells that signal to us that it's okay to be calm and at peace, no longer vigilant. It might be the aroma of dinner cooking or the sight of family members coming home at the end of the day, or the sounds of your neighbors settling in for the night. For people in the United States military, there's a special signal that says, "You're okay and everything is at peace." It's a melody called taps, and it's only 24 notes long. It was composed by a general during the Civil War along with his bugler. Back then, bugle calls were really important in the military. In the days before radio and other forms of communication, those bugle calls were the only way that military units could communicate over large areas. In the 1860s, during the Civil War, the end of the day was important. If there was enough time and peace to play taps, that was a signal that the camp was relatively safe. It meant that you were not under attack and there was nothing at that moment to worry about. To a camp of soldiers, the notes of taps meant that unless you were on guard duty, you could close your eyes and sleep in peace. They say that the first time taps was played at a service for fallen soldiers also took place during the Civil War. In those days, the traditional military salute was, as it still is, the firing of a 3-round volley of rifles. But this one time, they say, was after a long battle, when finally a ceasefire had been called and both sides stopped to bury those who were dead. In one camp, as the work ended and the memorial service began to take shape, the soldiers knew that sounding the artillery salute, firing those guns, might be taken as a return to fighting and not as a sacred memorial. And someone had the idea, instead of sounding a bugle, a sound that would not be taken as an aggressive act of war. Taps came to mean the same thing. It meant safe and quiet, an end to the day, a time to rest, time to turn the lights out, time to let their eyes close, and as best as they could, be at peace. That's what taps means. It's like a beautiful, powerful prayer. This weekend, many people in the U.S. are remembering and honoring all those who have died while serving in our military. As we listen to Doug Reichenfeld play taps now, I invite you to think of every soldier who might have been afraid. And then let taps remind you that they're now at peace. This reading by Marin Tirabassi, titled "The Work of Memorial Day," reminds us that those who have died while serving this country in the military are as diverse as the nation itself, and that those who have served face challenges both while they are serving and when they leave the service. Many of these challenges have to do not only with the stress and strain and often trauma of military service itself, but also with issues related to gender, class, ethnicity, and sexuality. The work of Memorial Day is not just to remember those who have died, though it is that for sure, but also to honor their struggle by working for more inclusion, more compassion, and more justice. The work of Memorial Day by Marin Tirabassi. Irving Berlin was an immigrant, and he gave us God Bless America. Catherine Lee Bates was a lesbian, and she gave us America the Beautiful. And how many are there, new American, transgender, lesbian, gay, queer in many names, people of every faith and no faith who have served this country? And so, leaning into a saint of mine, Howard Thurman, let me say, when parades of middle school bands are over, and cemetery flowers and new flags droop, when the grills cool off and people return to work and school, the work of Memorial Day begins. To find the lost among our veterans and heal minds and bodies of everyone. To welcome the homeless from among all the nations and release those waiting to be deported. To celebrate our diversity from the inside out. To bring peace so there need be no more war. To find music in the heart, grateful to those who wrote it, and willing to sing for everyone who needs to hear.
Atlantic and Pacific flow, the Great Lakes and the Gulf of Mexico. The land between sustains us all to cherish it, our tireless call. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To one more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. We reach these shores from many lands. We came with hungry hearts and hands. Some came by force and some by will, at the auction block or the darkened mill. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To one more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. We died in your fields and your factories, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees, with an old coat hanger in a room somewhere, a trail of tears, an electric chair. Arise, arise, let's see the future in your eyes. To one more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. Our great responsibility to be guardians of our liberty, till tyrants bow to the people's dreams, justice flows like a mighty stream. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To one more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To one more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire.
Each week around this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows that have been submitted by members of the congregation. We share both the things that we are mourning and the things that we are celebrating, so that they need not be held alone. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please join me in saying, "We hold you in our hearts." First of all, a joy from Kathy Mayetta. She says, "My husband Pat had successful heart valve replacement surgery this week." To Kathy and Pat and their family, we hold you in our hearts. A sorrow, an update of a sorrow that we read last week from Rich Goff, speaking of his wife, Rachel Butler Pardee. Rachel's doctors have decided to move forward with her current medications for cancer and hope to mitigate her allergies with additional medications. He says, "We ask for your continued positive vibes as we pursue this course of action." To Rachel and Rich and their family, we hold you in our hearts. A sorrow submitted by Barbara Shaw. Barbara says, "Every Memorial Day weekend for many years, I have gathered with my sisters, nieces, nephews, and sometimes cousin in decorating family graves in Western Illinois and telling family stories. This year, we are unable to get together. It is a sacrifice we know is necessary, but we will miss this gathering very much." To Barbara and her family, and all those who are missing family gatherings this year, we hold you in our hearts. Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. We pause to consider those places in our lives and in the world that are far from peaceful. In our own hearts, we are uneasy. We seldom come to that place of stillness where we might find comfort and ease, where we might find clarity and wisdom. May our hearts be at peace. In our homes, we are often detached and at odds, even from those whom we most love. We tend to cling to things and to noise, to distance ourselves from what's most important. May our homes be at peace. In our religious communities, we are often less than kind. We sometimes see that which ought to bind us together as that which makes us tense and combative, as a means for separation rather than unity. May our congregations be at peace. In our communities, we see deep divisions, from quiet indifference to outright violence. We are torn asunder. We are at war, whether hot or cold. Neighborhoods are crumbling at our feet. May our communities be at peace. In our nation, we deal with conflict by making more conflict. Our default position seems to be violence rather than calm, fear rather than love, closing rather than opening our hearts and our minds. May our nation be at peace. In our world, conflicts erupt each day, nation against nation, ethnic group against ethnic group, one corporate interest against another. Cries of anguish and shouts of anger drown out songs of reconciliation. May our world be at peace. May peace radiate outward from where we are, bathing our hearts, our homes, our community, our world in the healing waters of love and the comforting warmth of light. Amen. The short version of our nation's origin myth goes something like this. The United States began with Columbus's discovery of America, continued with the settlement at Plymouth Rock by the Pilgrims. The country won its independence from England in the American Revolution, survived a civil war, and expanded westward until it became the enormous, rich, and powerful nation that it is today. As I've mentioned before, that particular myth leaves out some pretty important details, like the slaughter and decimation of indigenous peoples, the enslavement of Africans upon whose backs the American economy was built, and the seizure of land from Mexico in what is now the American Southwest through war. But within the framework of our dominant origin myth, Memorial Day fits in just after the Civil War, when a divided America, at least according to the myth, put aside its differences, buried its war dead, both in the North and in the South, and moved on. Memorial Day was a day to honor those who died on both sides during that war. And lest we forget, 625,000 or more soldiers died during the Civil War. If the same number of Americans per capita had died in Vietnam as died in the Civil War, 4 million names would be on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial instead of 58,000. The post-Civil War era was a time of unimaginably huge loss and intense mourning. It's also worth noting that as many as 2/3 of the soldiers who died did so as a result of diseases such as typhoid, dysentery, and malaria, which in some ways resonates with our own time of pandemic. At any rate, Memorial Day, according to our national myth, was when our country started healing. Many of us were taught that the holiday began in 1868 when the Union Veterans Group, the Grand Army of the Republic, instituted the practice of decorating the graves of those who died in the war on May 30th of each year, a practice that quickly spread through both the North and the South. In some parts of the country, it was known as Decoration Day, and still is in a few places. But of course, nothing is quite as simple or straightforward as the myth. In fact, the first celebration of Memorial Day apparently took place on May 1st of 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm grateful for the following description of this event, which comes from an article by David W. Blight, a professor of history and the director of the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition at Yale University. During the final year of the war, the Confederates had converted Charleston's Washington Racecourse and Jockey Club into an outdoor prison. Union captives were kept in horrible conditions in the interior of the track. At least 257 prisoners died of disease while there and were hastily buried in a mass grave behind the grandstand. After the Confederate evacuation of Charleston, Black workmen went to the site, reburied the Union dead properly, and built a high fence around the cemetery. They painted the fence and built an archway over an entrance on which they inscribed the words, "Martyrs of the Racecourse." The symbolic power of this low country planter aristocracy's bastion was not lost on the freed people who then, on May 1st, 1865, in cooperation with some white missionaries and teachers, staged a parade of some 10,000 people on the track. A New York Tribune reporter witnessed what he said was a procession of friends and mourners, the likes of which South Carolina and the United States never saw before. The procession was led by some 3,000 Black school children carrying armloads of roses and singing the Union marching song, John Brown's Body. Several hundred Black women followed with baskets of flowers, wreaths, and crosses. Then came Black men marching in cadence, followed by contingents of Union infantrymen. Within the cemetery enclosure, a Black children's choir sang "We'll Rally Round the Flag" and "Star-Spangled Banner" and spirituals and hymns before a series of Black ministers read from the Bible. After the dedication, the crowd dispersed into the infield and enjoyed picnics, listened to speeches, and watched soldiers drill. The war was over, and Memorial Day had been founded by African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and consecration. The war they had boldly announced had been about the triumph of their emancipation over a slaveholders' republic. Despite the size of the event and accounts of it in newspapers, its memory was suppressed by white Charlestonians in favor of their own version of the day. From 1876 onward, after white Democrats took back control of South Carolina politics, the day's racecourse origins vanished. And so it was that the true story of the first Memorial Day was lost, suppressed, or intentionally forgotten and whitewashed, as has been the case with so much of our American history, especially those parts of our history related to race. That first Memorial Day, as it was celebrated by freed Blacks and a handful of whites, was truly a holiday, a holy day in every sense of the term. It was a time of remembrance of the suffering of enslaved people and the long, bloody struggle for their emancipation, their freedom. Unfortunately, it was not the end of the struggle for freedom, and the work of emancipation remains far from over. The shooting of Ahmaud Arbery is just the most recent example of the ways in which young Black men, in particular, are considered guilty until proven innocent in our country, and are far more likely than their white counterparts to be killed simply for walking or jogging down the street. The work of emancipation in our country is far from over. As Ella Baker said, until the killing of Black men black mothers' sons becomes as important to the rest of the country as the killing of a white mother's son, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. The false whitewashed version of Memorial Day would have us believe that the end of the Civil War meant that blacks were truly free once and for all, equal to whites in this country. However, oppression has a way of persisting, changing forms, morphing into different manifestations, but essentially remaining intact and deeply buried within any given cultural, societal, or economic system. But those of us who are, for the most part, members of the dominant non-oppressed groups are trained to be in denial about these many manifestations of oppression that might be invisible to us most of the time. One of the first steps toward waking up from our slumber of denial is to look at the history of our country in an open-minded way, such that we can see beyond our national myths, and in an open-hearted way, such that we can understand the experiences of those who continue to be marginalized and oppressed. It is important to understand the history of our country as an always unfolding narrative. The more perspectives that are included, the closer we come to a complete understanding of who we are as a people and as a nation. It's hard work to re-examine our history and our long-held assumptions about who we are, but it is essential work, especially if we want to grow and move forward from where we are, if we want to become unmired from our current place of reactive defensiveness and toxic denial. And this work is deeply spiritual, religious work. As Unitarian Universalists, we embrace the idea that we as humans are responsible for whatever evil or malevolence or wrongdoing that exists in the world, and that we as humans are also responsible for our own salvation by creating justice, by helping those who are injured, and by offering love and compassion to one another and to all the world. This work is done in community with others. It is a process that involves taking a good, hard look at our shortcomings in living up to our promises and our highest aspirations, and then calling ourselves back to living up to those promises and aspirations, knowing that we will often, if not always, fall short, but that we will persist nevertheless. I know that we all have a lot to deal with right now. The challenges of the pandemic continue to be very real and at times overwhelming and discouraging. But this Memorial Day weekend, I encourage you to take a moment to step back from our dominant national myth, to gain a better perspective on the deeper meaning of this holiday, to think not just of those who died in wars, although that remembrance is crucially important and too often forgotten, but also to remember the community of freed slaves in Charleston who provided a model for grace in the aftermath of war, a model for remembering both heroism and the systems of oppression that made that heroism necessary. My hope and my prayer is that we will engage in this work together, that we will rediscover the holy part of this holiday again, and that we will learn from our real history something important about who we are and who we might become. May it be so. Amen. Mary is about to lead us in singing Amazing Grace, a song that was included in hymnals that were distributed during the Civil War to soldiers on both sides of the war. and was often sung at the funerals of service people, as it still is today. It was also almost certainly one of the hymns sung on that very first Memorial Day at the racetrack in Charleston, South Carolina in May of 1865. Please rise in body and or spirit and join in singing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun.
We'll now give and receive our morning offering. This week, our designated offering will benefit Veterans Place of Pittsburgh, located on Washington Boulevard in Pittsburgh's East End. Veterans Place is dedicated to ending homelessness among veterans in the Pittsburgh region. They offer homeless veterans a safe, supportive, and regenerative environment as they gain the necessary skills to face real-life challenges, secure permanent housing, and lead productive and self-sufficient lives. If you'd like to make a donation via our online giving system, you can do so in one of two ways. You can go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the step-by-step instructions. Once you get to the drop-down menu, just choose either 2020 pledge if you're paying on a pledge, or designated collections if you're giving to Veterans Place this week. Or you can text a gift by dialing 412-324-3130. For example, if you're texting a gift toward your pledge, dial 412-324-3130, enter $amount followed by the word pledge. Or if you're giving to our designated offering, enter $amount followed by the word special. You can also mail a check the old-fashioned way, and you can find our mailing address at our website, sunnyhill.org. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Please join us in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We'll close today with these words by Andrea Hawkins Kemper. May we see all as it is, and may all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. For if not us, who? If not now, when? This is answering the cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now, to be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. Go in peace and stay in peace.